Good evening, Warband, and welcome back to the Red Pill Cult meeting. I hope you've all got your red robes, sacrificed your goat, and prepared for the evening roast. So, for those of you new to this particular segment, a while back, there was a small little YouTube channel known as Think Before You Sleep. A self-proclaimed philosopher of the somewhat established manosphere at the time, who really hit it big after making a whole bunch of videos on MGTOW. And then he got so big that MGTOW just wasn't really doing it for him anymore. So he tried to bury his past by deleting all that prior content, scrubbing his channel of the acronym, and essentially disavowing it. And then, to his critics, he decided, well, you all just didn't do enough research on me. That's why you disagree with me. That's why you don't like me. Well, we're here to correct that by digging up his past and looking through it one episode at a time. But before we go any further, thank you for hopping in chat. We've got Matria, Forno Raisin, Sergeant Grinch, Awesome Boss, Just Some Random Guy, Armed Sasquatch, and Garrett Grant. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We get ready for the roast. And reception to the individual segment was quite good today, so we'll definitely be keeping that up. Don't tell it in such a mellow tone. I want to stay awake for this. I don't know. Well, no, I got some Captain Morgan's Bold Spiced here, so I'm sure that we'll get a little more excited as things go on. But here we go. And this one, we may get particularly heated with this one. Can't tell which is worse. Listen to this or playing War Thunder? Like, ooh. Ooh. Pretty sure that somewhere a War Thunder developer just felt that psychic damage. I will have to make sure that we set this to, 1.5 times speed. Hit record, and then we shall begin. Actually, double check. This is 7. And we are continuing our series of reviewing the past of Think Before You Sleep with his 37th episode titled Your Life Sucks.
So my yoga classes this week, I've been teaching my students about balance because what I do for my classes is I don't just provide people a workout, but I actually say, here's how to actually get good at this stuff. So that you're not just kind of doing whatever, but it's like, I've got a plan, I've got a goal. I'm like a real person who's trying to get physically fit as opposed to just someone who kind of shows up to a yoga class on the weekend and, so just to make me feel like I'm actually getting better. I want students who actually get results. And I do have quite a lot of students who do. And so I've been talking about balance physically. And by the way, balance physically is just kind of like a skill. Any sort of skill you build, whether it's through exercise or anything, this is how a skill is built.
Yeah, jeez. Can't even stay on your topic for the first minute, but yes, set goals and find balance. Okay, Mike. Kind of generic to start off with, but if I waffle on every single point, we'll be here an hour.
You have all these different things that you could possibly do. Let's say if I'm going to learn how to weld, I've got 100 different things I have to learn to do to weld properly. I can only focus on one of those at a time.
Not really. Like, it does not take long to learn how to weld if you have someone showing you. It's just, hey, have the face cover down so that you're not, burning out your retinas. Move it along the specific point. Now, admittedly, I'm thinking of very simple welding, more advanced welds. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to learn, but the actual process of welding, it's not terribly difficult. I wouldn't say it's 100 things. It's maybe 12 things. You could probably learn to do basic welding if you know, like, 12 basic things, most of them safety measures.
Now, of course, if you can only focus on one, you make sure it is the most important possible thing you could find. Because you only get one. Because you can only do.
Most important thing is make sure that the hood is down before you start looking at stuff. Otherwise, you will burn out your eyes. You will get blisters on the inside of your eyeballs, and it will be incredibly painful, and it will blind you. So, yeah, I'm sure everyone who's done welding will agree, and everyone who's going to weld, make sure you have a bloody good hood. Don't cheap out on the hood, and make bloody sure it is down before you start the welder.
One for about 2 weeks to a month. Certainly, it's probably going to take about a month if you're new, because you're going to be very inefficient. You're going to waste a lot of time.
I literally learned to weld in like 20 minutes. Like, again, like I wouldn't say that I trained as like in the trade of welding, but if you need two pieces of metal to stick together, it does not take you a month. It takes you an introductory lesson of like 20 minutes, a quick demonstration of what to do, and then some critique for your first couple welds. It does not take you a month. But this guy's a yoga instructor, not a welder, so yeah. Oh god.
In about 2 weeks to get good at something or to automate something if you're a little bit more experienced, because you will know this is the exact way I have to think about doing this. I'm going to get this done. 2 weeks, bam, I've memorized how to do this. And so you work on those one by one, 2 weeks to a month at a time, and you just memorize it over and over again. The reason why it takes a long.
Okay, so it takes you 2 weeks to memorize one thing. You're saying there's 100 things. That is literally 2 years of just focusing on each individual aspect of welding. Oh god. Okay, just rush through this. He's got to have a point in here somewhere.
Long time to get good at a skill. Like, I've been learning Japanese for 4 years now, and there's all these videos on YouTube on how to learn Japanese, how to be fluent in Japanese in 6 months. Not possible. I mean, if you live in the country, you can get decent at speaking the language if you live in the country of the natives, but you can't become fluent in 6 months. There's too many words you have to learn. There's too many words you have to learn and learn like they're nothing. Like, I want to be able to say I like something like I can say it in English. It takes a while to do that, but then you have to do that with thousands of other words. Not only that, but you have to spend.
To be fair, there's plenty of people who've been speaking English literally their entire lives as a first language, and they still suck at it. So, yeah, learning Japanese in 6 months, obviously, that's just a marketing ploy. But if you can be passable in English, well, passable in Japanese, like if you're able to understand what someone is saying to you on a basic level, and you're able to communicate your intentions to them on a basic level, and you can do that in 6 months, I think that was probably reasonable. Yeah, you're not going to be holding deep discussions in the language. But if you thought about, hey, what are all the words I need to know to hold basic conversation in English, and then what would be the equivalent of that in Japanese? I think 6 months is reasonable. But no, you're not going to have a deep understanding of it in 6 months. Because again, it takes what? Like, to reach a basic adult level of English understanding, it takes 12 years, and that's growing up in the culture with the language and being given a formal education the entire time. So no, you're not going to have an equivalent mastery of Japanese in 6 months. But you wouldn't have that under your basic language, and even then there's still post-secondary education for understanding English. Because that clip from Rick and Morty is like, how are you still learning English in high school? It's the language you speak. Japanese context heavy, so I'm not sure about passable. Well, I mean, I understand that. But at the same time, like, it's like, yeah, there's context heavy, so you might be making faux pas. You might be getting stuff wrong. Like, what's the word? Like, you might be using, what's the phrase? Like, you might be using, like, oh my, where you really shouldn't, and it's kind of rude to use. But like, you're still going to get the basic phrase across. It's just you're going to be perceived as having a bad attitude due to the language barrier. But it's not like you'll be saying the entirely wrong word. just some weird context, people are going to think you're unusual. But if they can still get the basic message across, that's good enough. Anyway, side tangent. Let's just keep going.
Thousands of hours learning how to read, because learning how to read in Japanese is very, very hard. Learning how to read in a lot of languages is very hard, even if the symbols are repetitive like they are in English. Actually, in English, my God, even though our symbols are repetitive, every single word is pronounced differently. That must be so fucking confusing for everybody else who's not a native speaker of English. But the way you get that done, the way you learn something very complex like that, is just by taking it one step at a time, working at something until it's automatic. And usually for your big things, it's going to take about 2 weeks to a month. But outside of this, balance is a very good idea psychologically. Now you have a yin and yang symbol, and maybe you've noticed this. There's a white side and a black side. But on the white side, there's a little black dot, and on the black side, there's a little white dot to say that in balance, there is two sides. But in the good side, you have a little bit of evil, and on the bad side, you have a little bit of good. Because if you're good completely, with no evil part of you, with no balance of evil, with no little bit of a tint of evil, you're harmless. You're weak. Because the second someone who's evil attacks you, you're so good you couldn't possibly fight them back as fighting is technically evil. You couldn't possibly fight them back to defend yourself, which means they can commit evil against you and everybody else because you're not willing to fight back, and neither are they. If you're going to be evil, you have to be at least a little bit good. Otherwise, any next person is going to be able to take you out. If you're the baddest kid on the playground, it only takes two weaker kids to take you out.
No. No. Wait, what? If you're pure evil, well, two weaker people will take you out? What? Yeah. Let's review Machiavelli. If you have to choose between being loved and feared, it is better to be feared than loved. Like, yeah, okay, there's a difference between being evil and stupid. And yes, the whole argument is oh yeah, the two weaker kids could take you out. Yeah, but how many times have people been in this situation where oh yeah, guys, he can't take out all of us. Let's rush them all at once. Yeah, no one's gonna initiate that. Because you cow the individuals with fear. So, anyway, side tangent. Let's keep going.
If you're trying to create a real big evil movement and you start harming your followers, you start being too overbearing, people won't follow you and your evil plan won't be taken out. Like I read this book with a guy named Carl Panzram, which is a fantastic book on a guy who was a murderer. Now, Carl Panzram was too evil for his own good because he had all these well thought out plans of how my goal is to murder.
This guy reads a lot of weird books. We have Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, Mein Kampf, and now this book about a murderer who was too evil. Ugh. Let's keep going.
For as many people as possible. He had all these well thought out plans on how to do it, but he never got to execute them because the second he got out of jail, he'd do something evil immediately after he got out of jail and he'd get thrown right back in.
I don't think he did it. I don't think he got thrown back in jail because he was evil. I think he got thrown back in jail because he was stupid. And what did he do that was evil? Something evil is so vague. There's a difference between him doing something that would make R-rated horror movies look like a Care Bears episode and he got drunk and robbed the liquor store. There's a difference in what qualifies as evil for the purposes of getting one back into prison.
He wasn't able to contain any of his evil tendencies long enough to actually do some real evil. So the right balance is a very powerful methodology.
Again, good, evil, that's subjective. Look, all you have to do is look around in the world to find an insane number of people who commit what to most people would be an evil act, but they claim it's good. I think Chronic's got oh god, this image. It's two women embracing each other, staring at a greenhouse, and and it says, "Abortion is the beginning of a new life." It's holy shit! You are saying it is good to murder infants in the womb for the sake of being able to start a greenhouse with your girlfriend. as though the murder of an infant is somehow a prerequisite for such a thing. So, no, there's plenty of people who dress up evil as good. Ugh. So, no. Like, this talking out his ass as usual and being vague. But let's keep going.
Even when we look at things like the psychological traits, the best and newest thing, and we used to have the Myers-Briggs, which was off of Carl Jung's research on psychological types, and two female scientists, Myers and Briggs, made a test about it.
Oh yeah, new futures. That's the yeah. Abortion is the beginning of new futures. Yeah, yeah, and the future of a child to begin your new future, which you totally couldn't have done without murdering the kid, because contraception doesn't exist.
That people use in college still, though and I've taken both. I've taken a Myers-Briggs test and I've taken a Big Five test, and I think the Big Five aspects test explains me a lot more in a lot more useful ways. Whereas the Myers-Briggs test says you're feeling, you're sensational, you're thinking feeling or whatever. It doesn't really seem to lead to like what can I do with this? Like what job am I going to get if I'm more thinking or feeling, as opposed to what job am I going to get if I'm more agreeable versus disagreeable? If I'm more agreeable because these tests have been so well thought out, I'm going to do a customer service job. I'm going to be a party planner. I'm going to be someone who organizes people. If I'm more disagreeable, I'm going to be a manager, or at the very least, I'm going to be in a place where I'm not constantly flooded by new people. Am I more introverted or am I more extroverted? Am I
If you are getting your career advice based on a personality quiz, I think that the problem's a little bit deeper because I let's put it this way. You don't get a job based on whether or not you're going to enjoy it. You get a job based on, is it going to pay you well, and will you be able to tolerate the work? And even then, you're probably going to switch your employer based on whether or not you can tolerate the people at that particular field. But if you're deciding, yeah, I'm going to get this job because this personality quiz said that it was best suited to my particular way of thinking, I think that you need to reevaluate yourself without getting some external stuff and realize how badly you need to think over your life. But yeah, think before you sleep has psychological issues of a certain sort. Yeah, not really surprising. Let's keep going. This is the least of his problems.
more conscientious or not conscientious? And neurotic and open are the last two. The problem is not what side you're on. The problem is being too far to one side. And so if I am 99% disagreeable, I'm going to have a very, very hard time making things happen with other people. I'm going to have a very hard time communicating, because if I'm going to communicate properly, if I'm going to make a proper trade, then I'm going to have to understand the other person on their side. Like I mentioned,
Oh no, actually, remember Neil Gaiman actually made a speech where to succeed at a job, you need two out of three aspects. People have to like you have to do good work, and you have to be on time. So, no, you can be 99% disagreeable so long as you do really good work and you do it in a timely manner. But yeah, if you suck at either of those, then yeah, you're going to have people that like you at least somewhat. And as someone who has and still actively works in the trades, yes, you can have disagreeable buggers. But if they show up consistently and do decent enough work, they're going to remain employed.
before, if I'm going to have a successful product, what I have to do is I have to say, what product am I willing to provide? Now, if I'm super disagreeable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, this is my way or the highway, and the product I provide is the product. People have to like it because that's my thing. Whereas if you're the person who's viewing the content in this case, or buying the product, because it could be like maybe a new cleaning tool or something like that, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to buy? And there has to be a communication there. Is like, what am I willing to provide as someone who provides stuff, and what are you willing to buy from me out of things I provide? And if I pick the wrong product, which is the most likely thing that will happen, you're most likely not going to have an accurate description of what people actually need. And so you're going to need some feedback. But if you're never willing to accept any feedback about your product, about what people actually want, well, then you're never actually going to be able to make a good product. Now, certainly on the opposite end, if you are too agreeable, like I said, if you're not able to think of a good product, most people are not going to be able to think of a good product either. So a lot of times, and I find, because I'm on the more disagreeable end, a lot of times you'll find that, well, not once, most times you'll find that people don't really have a sense of what needs to be done. And so they'll give you a recommendation, but it will be totally nonsensical. It'll be something that would totally never work.
That's why we have standards for certain things. Yeah, inventing a new product, okay, yeah, that's something that's a bit tough, but providing an existing product or service into an untapped market, or even just filling a market demand, that doesn't require you to be highly agreeable or disagreeable. At most, it just requires you to be compliant. And okay, here's the thing with agreeable or disagreeable, it's a client. They are giving you money, they own you. You're not working for your vision, and the client is paying you for the privilege of sharing your vision. No, you're giving the client what they want. If the client says, hey, I want a garage, you don't build a house, you build a garage. Because that's what you're being paid to do. I don't know where agreeable versus disagreeable comes into play on this. But maybe I'm thinking on a completely different train of thought than Sean here. So let us continue.
And that's going to be most of your recommendations. So if you're super agreeable and you say yes to everything, well, I'll just make this change, I'll make that change, I'll make that change. You're eventually going to create a product that doesn't make any sense. So you
No, if you say, yeah, I'll make this change, I'll make this change, I'll make this change, the difference is, do you charge additional for the modifications? And how much do you charge? And how much are you willing to provide without charge? Because, yeah, there's some clients who are going to have a whole bunch of modifications. There's actually a job like that very recently. It was a royal pain in the butt. It took a lot of extra time. But guess what? You charge for all that extra time, you charge for the extra material. And so then, yeah, while you have to say no to other clients because now your schedule is getting all whacked, you're still fulfilling all the demands and you're being agreeable about it. Because at the end of the day, the dude's signing your paycheck. He's making it possible for you to continue your work and be employed and employ others. So you're going to have to be entirely agreeable. And if you're disagreeable to the point that, oh no, I can't accept this, I had a plan, I had a system, I can't let you interfere with that, then he's just going to hire somebody else. Maybe you'll, depending on the terms of your contract, maybe you'll get paid for what you've already done. But you're probably going to lose that and lose out on future clients. So depending on context, being highly agreeable versus highly disagreeable can matter. But then again, if someone's being unreasonable and demanding that you make a whole bunch of changes and it's messing with other clients' jobs that are going to pay more, yeah, maybe it is a good time to stop and walk away and be like, look, I have a whole bunch of other people on the waiting list. I can't afford to get tied up here with you. We can either make this compromise now, or you can hire somebody else to finish the job. I have to move on. So in that case, there's a way to either be highly agreeable or highly disagreeable without the need to have some kind of balance. It's more so which do you use depending on the context, because there's advantages and disadvantages to both extremes. Anyway, that's me adding my own little life experience in here. Let's keep going.
have to, in that case, find out which ones are the good pieces of feedback, which ones are the bad pieces of feedback. Like I had a student comment on my class one time that was actually fairly useful.
Oh, hey, think before you sleep. You are a traitor to the very people that built you up. And you, quite frankly, should be ashamed of yourself. But we do understand that that's not going to mean anything to you because you're entirely dependent on YouTube revenue to make a living. My critique would be you absolutely suck at live streaming and you do not have a charismatic face nor physical presence. So you should just go to exclusively producing these pre-produced and pre-scripted videos because that is your strong suit and it's where you're going to find the most success. Whether or not it generates you the most money is another question because I know live streams do tend to be better for the percentage of payout. But if you are entirely dependent on live stream revenue versus video revenue, then my critique would be find another career field, because the one you're currently on is not going to be super profitable in the long term. And if you have no additional skills, you're going to find yourself up shit's creek, especially when your current girlfriend divorces you. Oh, yeah, that would be other critique. If I was concerned for your sake, I would say ditch Brittany Venti. She's a liability who's only with you because you have YouTube clout, and she will take you for everything you're worth the instant that you show any kind of financial weakness. But since I don't like you, then I say, yeah, you should absolutely have unprotected intercourse with her while she's ovulating and start popping out a whole bunch of kids so that she can take you through divorce court and leave you with a ball and chain around your throat for the rest of your life. Take which advice you think, because I know which advice you're more likely to take. Let's keep going.
Because I'm not sure where it was psychologically at that time period, but she came up to me after class and said, your classes are way too similar. It doesn't feel like we're doing different classes. Now, I gave her more credit for that because I kind of been thinking the same thing. I said, I feel like my classes are very, very similar. I feel like I'm not changing them that much. And I've got to get out of this rut. And I think I had that idea for about a month or so. And then someone finally said, hey, your classes are too similar. And so I said, okay. But that's very rare that something like that happens. And so most times I'm saying no to stuff like that. Because most times it's, well, you're saying this because you don't understand this one factor of teaching that well, you're not aware because you're not a teacher. But it can't only be that, because if it's the case that my students could never ever be right, my customers could never ever be right about the products that they want, well, I better be very, very lucky to determine what they want for them. Or, well,
you should honestly just be thankful that they're willing to give you critique at all rather than just, buggering off to somebody else. A customer that is willing to give critique to what you are doing indicates that they still want to use your product and or service. And they're willing to actually give their thoughts on the matter. Yes, there's going to be some that just complain for the sake of complaining. But, I'd say that a good chunk of the population, especially in highly competitive fields, I don't know how highly competitive yoga instruction is. Or, maybe they just don't want change and don't want to swap teachers. I don't entirely think that he's wrong in this assessment that you need to pick what advice to take, but I also don't think that's particularly useful as advice. I don't know, maybe some people need it. Keep going.
Most likely option is that nothing's ever going to progress. And so, as a very disagreeable person, what I have to do is find out there's somebody who knows something more than I do, and there's somebody who could say the right thing that would help me be better. And so I have to be able to determine which ones are the ones who know what they're talking about, which ones are the ones who don't know what they're talking about, as opposed to saying no to everything. And on the...
Okay, actually, here, let me throw in my 2 cents on this, some of the better advice that I've heard. The people who are your critics, they may very well be right about the problem. It is very unlikely that they are correct about the solution. I forget what game it was, but there was one video game where one of the primary critiques during playtesting was that the pistol felt too weak. And so the advice was to increase the damage to make it feel stronger. And instead what the studio did was they changed out the sound effect of the pistol so that it made a bigger bang. They didn't change any of the damage numbers. And in subsequent playtests, the pistol's power was now praised. Again, case study of one, but that would be an example of how the critique might be correct, this pistol feels weak, but the solution was incorrect, up the damage numbers versus change out the sound effect.
An overly agreeable side, you probably...
Wasn't that Halo Spider Spectre? It might have been. I think it was a Halo story, but I honestly don't remember. I'm sure that the story is floating around on the internet somewhere, so it's probably out there.
I'll have to say I'm going to start saying no to most things now, or more things, because if I make too many changes, I'll be too far in one direction, uh, I'll be too far in possibly the wrong direction, and I'm not going to progress anywhere that way. So that's where the balance comes from psychologically. You don't want to be too far to one end. You want to be a good amount, and that amount's not 50-50. You know, it might be 95% to 5%. You might just need to pull yourself a little bit back in the opposite direction, just enough so that you can function in society. And because a lot of times you want to be on the extremes. If you want to be really, really professional, if you want to be really, really hard earning, a lot of those people are on the extremes of their spectrum, but they know just enough to make it by on the other side. Now let's bring things back to the yin and yang symbol, because I've been thinking very positively and very negatively. And I think what's happened over the past bunch of years is that we focused too much on the positive message. Like I had a student who was talking to me about the secret. Actually, not probably the secret. The secret was a book that described this thing called the law of attraction, where if I just attract certain, if I think certain things, I'll automatically attract those things to me. The problem with that thinking is, let's say you have a lot of terrible friends, and you have a lot of terrible friends, and what you're going to do is, I'm going to think more positively. I'm going to attract better friends. That's not going to happen. There's a reason why you have terrible friends. And the reason you have terrible friends is because you are not valuable enough to the people who are better for you to make them want to be friends with you. And so if you just think, I'm going to think more positive, I'm going to magically attract everybody who's more valuable, not going to happen. You have to say, realistically, I'm not that great. So what I'm going to have to do is fix myself so that better people want to be around me. And thinking more positively is not going to help you with that problem. Or it's like this.
Okay, in that situation, I'd go a little step further, because this was a piece of advice that I picked up many years ago. Ironically enough, I think it was some PUA shit. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. Here's the thing. If you're surrounded by a whole bunch of people who are dragging your ass down, the solution before you decide, oh, I need to think about getting better friends. Now, the first thing you need to do is think, I need to cut out all this dead weight dragging me down. Like, if you are friends with like 5 people and 3 of them do hard drugs on the regular, yeah, it doesn't matter whether or not you get people to replace them. You need to cut those people out of your life, because you're going to end up addicted to hard drugs and broke off your ass if you do so. So, now, unless it's a bear. Like, if you're hanging out with a bear that does cocaine, that's a whole different story. But humans that do cocaine generally, yeah, they tend to drain your wallet. So, you know, these are the kind of things you got to think about. It's not about, oh, I need to attract it, but at the same time, and I do not like The Secret, although I haven't really read it, but I haven't really heard anyone say anything useful that came from it. They just keep recommending it. Personally, I'd recommend The Courage to Be Disliked over The Secret. I find that far more practical in its advice. uh, anyway, I'm going off on a side tangent here. Let's see if he actually gets to his point, because, again, the title of this video is Your Life Sucks, and we're about halfway through this.
It's a method of problem avoidance. I'm just going to think positively, and I'm going to ignore the negative, because the student who I was talking to specifically said, I don't focus on negative things anymore, because that's just wrong for me. I think of it like this, since I didn't really fix anything earlier in my life, but I've gotten really, really into fixing physical items in the past 3 or 4 years or so. And I fix my car a lot with a friend who's...
Wait. You're telling me that you are, at the time of this video, in your mid-20s, and you have not fixed negative aspects of your life. And yet you're giving advice to people on how to fix the negative aspects of their life. You don't even consider stopping being a communist, allegedly stopping, as fixing a part of your life. Or are you just saying, like, I'm not that focused on self-improvement and self-reflection, which, again, kind of ironic that someone who doesn't focus on self-improvement or self-reflection makes a series of videos on self-improvement and self-reflection. But I guess it's easier to project your failings onto others rather than realize that you yourself are the problem. Anyway, let's continue in here. I'm talking about how he fixes physical objects because if you look at him, yeah, he strikes you as the kind of guy who absolutely has worked as a mechanic and gotten himself covered in grease before.
Who's much more knowledgeable about cars than I am. In fact, he's not a mechanic, but he easily could open up his own mechanic shop and do very, very well with that. But one thing you can do with a car is you have a check engine light. And the check engine light's designed to point out problems that your car is having. Now, if you want to avoid problems, what you could do is you could just find the wire that turns the check engine light on, and you can just unplug that wire, and your check engine light won't be on anymore. The issue with that, though, is that the problem is not solved. The problem is still there, and now it's just not pointing itself out to you. And there.
Yeah. After I figured out that the check engine light was like, hey, you need to replace the O2 sensors, like, oh, is that going to cause any immediate damage to the car? No. Oh. Okay, well now I know what the check engine light's all about. So I don't need to unplug the wire, just need to ignore the check engine light because it's not like it's that big a problem. Heck, the sound that your vehicle makes when you leave the key inside it and then open the door, that's far more of an annoyance.
There are quite a few things in the engine that'll be not a big deal. Well, it'll be a pain to solve it. It's like, this is a problem. Like you're gonna have to pay a bit of money to solve this. You're gonna have to do a bit of work to solve this problem right now. But if you wait on this problem, your entire engine will be destroyed. If you wait, you're gonna spend, instead of hundreds of dollars, you're gonna spend thousands of dollars. And so that check engine light can certainly be a lifesaver because I had a problem with an engine. I didn't know it was an engine core. I thought it was a spark plug problem. But I had this problem with my car, which it would misfire, it would shake. And it was doing this for about maybe 4 or 5 months.
Your car shook and misfired, and you didn't get it dealt with for 4 to 5 months. Let's sit in the air for a second. Jeez.
And then finally, the check engine light came on. It's like, thank God this fucking light came on. Because now I know how to identify the problem. It says, oh, cylinder 2 is having a problem, fix this crap. And so, we didn't know exactly what was wrong with cylinder 2 because it just said misfire on that cylinder. But eventually we figured it out because the check engine light pointed out the problem.
You needed the check engine light to realize that your car, which was shaking and misfiring, had an issue. The shaking and misfiring wasn't enough for you to go, hey, I better take this thing into a mechanic before I stop dead on the middle of the highway. Or I get a plume of smoke out of my front. No. I gotta wait 120 to 150 days before the check engine light comes on and lets me know what's wrong. I can't just pop it into a mechanic and say, hey, this thing shakes and misfires while it's on the road. Can you tell me what's wrong with it? I'm able to take a day or two off without using the vehicle for you to get a diagnosis. Holy bug. Oh, okay, let's keep going.
So you can sit here in problem avoidance. You can sit here and ignore what's true and focus on only the positive and whatever. And you'll just have a ton of bad things happen to you because you're not paying attention to them. Or you can say, hey, thank you for pointing out this problem. Now I can focus on it. Now I can actually fix it and actually make yourself better.
Okay, no, that's not negative things. Like, okay, ignoring the negative stuff. Okay, maybe some people would just ignore the issue for months on end. But I would personally see it as, okay, if you're someone who ignores negative stuff, that just means that you go like, oh, hey, bad crap's happening to me. Is there anything I can do about it? No? Okay, not worth thinking about. Is there something that I can do about it? Okay, then I'm going to focus more on trying to do something about it rather than complaining day after day after day about how this bad thing is happening to me. I mean, I don't know this guy who said he was ignoring bad stuff. I don't know exactly what Sean means about ignoring bad stuff, but like, if you're just focusing on the bad stuff in your life, then there's two things. Can you do something about it? If so, well, then why focus on the bad thing? Focus on the stuff you can do to mitigate it. Or even solve the issue. If it's something that you can't do anything about, i.e., the current geopolitical situation, that yeah, there's really no point in wasting your energy thinking about that day after day after day. Maybe just laugh at it, find a way to make some jokes about it, and move on in your life because you have a limited amount of willpower and energy each day. Focusing that on stuff that you actually have no power over, it is a waste of your energy. So we're just a little over halfway through this, guys, but there's a lot to dissect in this one.
Because the ultimate, well, since we're talking about yoga, the ultimate knowledge of yoga is that life is suffering. Your life is miserable. Your life is hard. Everything sucks and everything's terrible. But they could be less terrible. Maybe happiness doesn't exist. I think that's the, well, happiness in yoga exists after you die. What you're trying to do is you're
Happiness exists. It's a chemical reaction in the brain. Happiness is an emotion that is caused by certain chemical reactions. It exists. And no, there is nothing after death. There is no happiness. Your brain is not firing chemicals. By definition, you cannot feel emotions after you die. If you want to have arguments about the soul, then that's a whole other side issue, but I'm pretty sure that the emotional response is happiness as it experienced by earthly creatures certainly does not exist after you die. And if yoga is nihilistic to the point of thinking your life is miserable until you die, well, screw yoga and its philosophy then. Holy shit. That must be just for miserable people.
trying to create the perfect life. You're trying to create the perfect meditative sage out in the forest lifestyle. So that way you don't have to be born, because yoga believes in reincarnation, so that you don't have to be born again and you just sit with God and you're happy for the rest of eternity. So I guess happiness exists in that way, because in that case you're free of suffering. So I guess
Freedom of suffering is not happiness. It is neutrality. Just because you're not actively feeling bad does not mean that you are feeling good. Just like they say, like the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. Well, that is the same. The opposite of hate is not love, it is also indifference. Opposite of passion is dispassion. So, no, you do not find happiness by being taken out of the cycle of reincarnation. You find perhaps peace being taken out of the cycle of reincarnation. How much must your life suck if you think that the only way to be happy is to have no stimulation whatsoever?
if you kind of extrapolate this a little bit, yoga defines happiness as not suffering at all. Maybe we won't get there, but certainly what we could do is be happier by suffering less. So we take the very, very negative message that life is suffering. I always thought that was terrible. There's a lot of negative messages that are like that.
But that's the thing. Life is suffering. There's actually, I don't know if anyone saw like the Van Helsing movie. I think from the mid 2000s. It's quite a good Halloween movie, actually. We're coming up on Halloween in a couple weeks. I do recommend the Van Helsing movie. It's got Hugh Jackman. He plays an amnesiac badass, Wolverine, but fantasy Wolverine. Anyway, there's a point in that where he's tearing Frankenstein's monster off of a machine, and he says, "This is gonna hurt." And Frankenstein goes, "I am accustomed to pain." And Van Helsing responds with, "Lets you know you're alive." And that's true. Yes, life is suffering. Life is pain. Life is constantly trying to deal with a whole bunch of desires and demands that your body has. You need to breathe, you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to drink. You need a whole bunch of different things, or your body is going to cause you a whole lot of problems and suffering. But that's good because you're not dead. Because you can't experience any of the joy in life, any of the positive stimulus, any of the wonder without any of that suffering. So life is suffering means to accept suffering as part of life. And the instant that you make your goal in life to eliminate suffering, to minimize all discomfort, you may as well self terminate because you're wishing for death. Like, feel free to disagree either in the chat or in the comments, guys. Maybe I'm off base here, but at least that's my understanding of it.
The original sin. It's you're a sinner, you're evil, you're terrible, repent. Sounds awful, but it's correct. And if you don't see yourself as an evil person, oftentimes what you'll do is you'll do a lot of terrible things and you won't notice them. And you'll just go about on your way, continue to do terrible things that are bad for other people and possible. If it's bad for other people, it's probably bad for you as well. So you
No, there's plenty of stuff that's bad for other people but is good for you. Tons of stuff. In fact, we are. All life requires the taking from something else. Like me going. Taking a deep breath and exhaling. Yeah, guess what? I just took away a whole bunch of essential gases for the continued cellular respiration of most creatures. Well, basically every creature on the planet, and exhaled a toxic gas. Like, I do that for my continued survival, and it lowers the chances of survival for every other oxygen breathing creature on the planet, which is almost all of them. So, no. You are required to commit some degree of evil for your continued survival. That's life. If you're trying to go through life committing nothing that would be considered evil to anything else, then again, okay, honestly, if you really want to have the most virtuous and good life, go to a hospital, notify them that you are about to be deceased on their front step and that they should get their coolers ready. Make sure you've signed your organ donor card and paint the walls with your gray matter. Because then a whole bunch of people get to use your remains for their benefit, and you have caused little to no negative repercussions. And you also ensured that your stuff would be preserved in the best condition possible because you did it right outside a hospital. Anything beyond that is just a selfish desire to live. So if you prioritize being a quote unquote good person to everyone else beyond your own survival, that's the only path to take. Otherwise, accept that you need to be selfish and a little bit evil in order to continue existing and suck it up about your moral high ground.
consider yourself, what are all the bad things I could be doing? What are all the bad things I've done? And take inventory of that. And then if I could solve something, maybe I'm sort of
The on point heavy. Is it really evil if it's necessary? Well, this is where my own personal thoughts on subjective morality come in. And I like to use the idea of you tear a leaf off of a tree and drop it onto the grass. To the tree, it is evil because you have just taken away a piece of it that it spent energy and resources to make, and you've removed it. It can't use it. You basically tore out a piece of its external lungs, and it is, for lack of a better term, suffering. You drop it on the grass. For the grass, you have just given it a bounty of food because as that leaf decays, it is going to provide beneficial nutrients which will enhance the growth of the grass. To the tree, you are evil. To the grass, you are good. Which is it? The morality of good or evil is subjective to who benefits and who does not benefit. So to ask, is it evil if it's necessary? Well, that depends. Who suffers, who benefits? If you sacrifice 100 people to save 100 people. Oh, is that evil? It's evil to to the 100 people that you sacrificed. It's good to the 100 people that you saved. Trying to find some kind of cosmic absolute for good and evil, believe that is a fool's endeavor. Again, feel free to argue. Like, maybe you could make something that convinced me otherwise, but it would have to be a very convincing argument.
Or like a better person. So in this case, on this negative message, life is suffering, life is terrible, but you could suffer less. But the issue is that when people attempt to suffer less who are not good at it, which may very well be you, certainly it was me a while ago, and I was lucky enough to figure this out on my own. And I was lucky enough as well to be enhanced by people who were already ahead of me by hey, here, that thing that you thought, here's the shit that you're getting right. That's one of the great things about philosophy. One of the things I try to do on this channel is I'm not trying to change your opinion here. All I'm trying to do is try to explain things you've already figured out and say, hey, this is the right thing you're doing. This thing over here, that's correct. Keep doing it.
Not trying to change opinions? I mean, okay, but not entirely sure I buy that. Personally, like, I don't know if I'm actually trying to change anybody's opinion. Chances are most of my audience already agrees with a bunch of stuff. But I would like to think that at least some of the stuff I'm introducing is new and maybe gets people to think, oh, hey, maybe this actually has some merit. I don't know if I'll change anybody's minds, but I might add another facet to people's existing philosophies. And that'd be nice for me.
And so I've been lucky enough over these past couple of years, past decade or so, to have people point those things out. And well, the way you solve this stuff out is to set the right level of challenge. This is an exercise principle that I learned from teaching exercise. You don't want to make things too hard, but you don't want to make things too easy. But when you first start out, you have no idea what is too hard, what's too easy. So success breeds success, failure breeds failure. The more you succeed, the more likely you are to succeed. The more you fail, the more likely you are to fail. And so if your first challenge out, you fail at your new change.
As someone who has played a lot of, well, okay, not even a lot. As someone who's played some Soulsborne and has a whole Let's Play on Elden Ring on this channel, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that failure breeds failure, success breeds success. I'd say that you need to fail to understand where you are lacking in order to find what is necessary to become successful. Whereas if you are too successful, your overconfidence will lead to failure because you won't be trying to improve yourself. But again, not being too deep on that aspect. We'll keep going.
Then it's going to be much more likely that you fail again.
The odd point heavy. Intentional harm of other living beings for no purpose other than pleasure could be considered evil. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely do see that. And have you even considered that? Like, that's probably about the closest thing to evil where there is no greater purpose beyond simply the pleasure of it. Like, I get that, but I also wonder, does that actually occur in the real world? I mean, maybe it does. And yeah, it's probably about the closest I could think to some sort of absolute evil causing suffering for no other purpose than pleasure. Even then, at the same time, though, it's not that there isn't any sort of good. Like, okay, because here's the thing. Let's imagine that let's take humanity and let's actually make a monster real. It is something that just causes pain and suffering to people for no other reason than its own self-indulgence. It can't be negotiated with, it can't be reasoned with, it's just going to mess stuff up purely. Like, it is probably about the purest thing that we could think of as evil. Does destroying it, eliminating it, getting rid of it, actually provide a net positive? Or does the removal of the common enemy mean that now we're going to fight amongst each other? Like, you can still find a net positive to something that you see as evil, because having any sort of pressure on an environment will encourage growth in a certain direction. usually to become stronger, because if you eliminate all threats, well, then you get many of the problems of modern society, and, well, as an example in nature, the bonobos. Or perhaps even something like certain birds of paradise, where they're so fragile and delicate that the introduction of any pressure means the extinction of the species. So without evil, good becomes weak. I need to actually would I really should double check this, but if anyone's read Alan Moore's take on Swamp Thing, there is actually a philosophical discussion about good versus evil, where the question of whence cometh evil, like what is evil? And the answer given by what was known as the Parliament of Trees was look to the soil. Evil is necessary for growth. If there is no evil, if there is nothing for good to grow from, to take root in, then you just get stagnation and rot, which will eventually become evil. Evil is, perhaps unfortunately, necessary for the continued existence of good. This would be an interesting discussion to have in greater detail. But if that makes sense to you, let me know. Or if I'm, again, completely off base, also let me know. It's something that I do think about and I think is worthy of discussion. Preferably with people more intelligent than Sean here.
If your first challenge out you succeed, then it's going to be...
That's the thing, the on point heavy. It's more like conflict creates growth rather than evil, but that's the thing. What is the difference between conflict and evil to those who are suffering from the conflict?
much more likely that you succeed again. So, of course, because you know that principle, what you're going to do when you first start out is make the idea so simple that failure is almost not even an option. It's like you have a 99% chance of succeeding. And so you're going to make it overly easy because people oftentimes when they do things, they make things really, really hard. Like they'll go into a workout class and say, I should be able to do 40 push-ups by the end of this month or I'm a failure. But I can't even do one. And so that goes far too hard. And so the way you make that simpler, that you put yourself in the right...
Well, what you do is you simply take away the timeline. Like, I want to do 40 push-ups. If you can't even do one, okay, then you simply push yourself to try to do 40 over and over and over again. And make sure it's push-ups with good form, like no crappy form push-ups. You'll eventually do it, but if you're giving yourself an impossible timeline, yes, that's foolish. If you set a near impossible task and give yourself an extensive timeline, then okay. Regardless, let's keep going. yeah, lol, just 40. Yeah, like let's. I'll be honest. Even when like I wasn't particularly working out that much, 40 push-ups in one stretch within a month, entirely doable. If you were doing it every single day and you recorded what you were doing every single day, you'd probably be able to do 40 within a month. But even though my physique may not be the best amongst the warband, I'm pretty sure it's still better than Sean's. So maybe I lack his frame of reference for this.
Directions you say, I can't do a full push-up at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work for the next week to make it so I have a perfect modifier.
God, I remember when 50 push-ups was like punishment in karate. Like seriously, like an 8-year-old can be told, yeah, do 50 push-ups after class because you were a little shit. And guess what? You did that. Maybe you didn't do it all in one sitting, but you didn't leave class until you had 40 push-ups done and you could do it. Jeez. And on point heavy, like honestly, if you suck at push-ups, double check your particular posture because you can make push-ups significantly harder or easier depending on your form. So make sure that your position is good and your posture is good, and you'll probably see some decent improvement. And then a lot of it is just getting your muscles used to the action. So I guarantee you, if you do 3 sets of push-ups to failure every single day, and it won't take you long. Like, it really will not take you long to do that. but if you do that every single day or every single night before bed, you will see results. And like if you can't even do 15 push-ups in one set with good form, if you do that 3 sets a day every single day for a month, and you're eating healthy and getting proper amount of sleep, I can basically guarantee you that by the end of the month you'll be doing 40. But that's beside the point. We are God. This segment's going to be a long one, guys. Jeez, I am sorry. There's just too much to dissect in this episode.
Push up. That's a very realistic goal. That's a goal you can eat that almost everybody can succeed at, unless you're severely injured, unless you're very very old. I don't think I've explained modified planks to a lot of people. I don't think I've ever had anybody who couldn't do it. So that's a very very reasonable goal. And of course, if you can modify plank, then you can start making it a little bit harder. Maybe it's like you go halfway down with a plank or with a push up, let's say. Sorry, I meant push up instead of plank, by the way. You can go halfway down with a push up, and then you can drop your knees after halfway down, and you just get closer and closer and closer until you do a full push up, and then you can start making it harder and harder and harder. And now, eventually, maybe it's not a month, but maybe it's like 5 or 6 months. Now you can do your 40 push ups.
Five to 6 months to get to 40 push-ups. I don't know the kind of people that Sean has hung out with to think that that is at all a reasonable timeline. Or maybe I've just got a stupid amount of physical fitness compared to him. I don't know, but quite honestly, that just seems like an insane amount of time. Like if you, like my thoughts would be that if you are doing consistent push-up exercises every single day for 5 to 6 months, you should probably be able to do triple digits in one set by that point, or at the very least be approaching triple digits. Like, jeez.
And you can solve your problems like that too. Let's say so my yoga classes is
Oh, crap, I accidentally skipped back. Where were we? We were about like the 13-minute mark.
is that life is suffering. Your life is miserable. Your life is hard. Everything sucks and everything's terrible. But they could be less terrible. And maybe happiness doesn't exist. I think that's happiness in yoga exists after you die.
Okay, yeah, no, we were there. We were, what, about the 15-minute mark, maybe? I accidentally clipped the skip ahead button.
Oftentimes what you'll do is you'll do a lot of terrible things, and you won't notice them, and you'll just go about on your way, continue to do terrible
Mark.
die. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create the perfect life. You're trying to create the perfect meditative, sage, out in the forest lifestyle, so that way you don't have to be born in. Because extrapolate this a little bit, the very, very negative message that life is suffering, but it's correct. It's impossible if it's bad for other people. So in this case, on this negative message, life is suffering, life is terrible. But it was me a while ago, and I was lucky enough to figure this out on my own. Well, the way you solve this stuff out is to set these out or fail. And so if your first challenge out, you fail at your new change, it's succeeding. And so you're going to make it overly easy, because people oftentimes when they do things, they make things really, really hard. Like they'll go into...
Okay, yeah, now we're back to about the 17-minute mark. But yeah, seriously, him being vegan would have to be the only reason why that much suffering. Like if you are eating healthy, not vegan, but actually healthy, you're getting your proteins, you're getting enough like calories every single day to meet your caloric requirements. But yeah, no, like, and I'll be honest, like I've seen more people who started off really, really chunky, and then they started a more active lifestyle, and they turned that fat into pure muscle basically, and they slimmed right the heck down. Like, that to me is easier than trying to build up a whole lot of muscle as a skinny dude. Might be entirely subjective due to my own experiences there, but I think that like if you are overweight, you'll probably have a much easier time being able to build muscle and get stronger than a skinny dude who needs to add on a ton of calories and isn't used to putting that much stuff into his body every single day. My 2 cents, take it for what you will. But Seriously, let's try to get through the last third of this before this video goes on for 1 hour.
To a workout class and say, I should be able to do 40 push-ups by the end of this month or I'm a failure. But I can't even do one. And so that goal is far too hard. And so the way you make that, that's a very realistic goal. That's a goal you can eat that almost everybody can succeed at, unless you're severely injured, unless you're very, very old. I don't think I've explained plank and modified planks to a lot of people. I don't think I've ever had anybody who couldn't do it. So that's a very, very reasonable goal. And of course, if you can modify plank, then you can start making it a little bit harder. Maybe it's like you go halfway down with the plank or with a push-up, let's say. Sorry, I meant push-up instead of plank, by the way. You can go halfway down with a push-up, and then you can drop your knees after halfway down. And you just get closer and closer and closer until you do a full push-up. And then you can start making it harder and harder and harder. And now, eventually, maybe it's not a month, but maybe it's like 5 or 6 months. Now you can do your 40 push-ups. And you can solve your problems like that too. Let's say you're suffering pretty badly, because all of us are suffering pretty badly, and you take inventory.
No, not all of us are suffering pretty badly. I'm not suffering pretty badly, at least. So, definitely not all. Again, he's probably got his own people and influences that make him think that way. But no, not suffering particularly badly. Life's pretty chill. Fairly low stress. Like, when my biggest concern is, will I have this unit of Space Marines assembled and primed by Sunday or Monday so that I can take advantage of the holiday to maybe get a tabletop game in? Like, if that's my biggest immediate concern in life, I'm not suffering that hard. I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much.
And for about, let's say, 2 weeks, this is probably how long it takes to think about this stuff. And you think about 100 problems you have. You probably have more than 100 problems. Well, let's say it's 100, because that's an easy number to track from. You're not going to try to solve all 100 problems at the same time. What you're going to do is you're going to find, if you're new to this, if you've done this for a while, you can start picking bigger problems. But if you're new, you're going to find the most solvable problem you have and start working in that direction. So let's say a common problem. Let's say you're $10,000 in debt. Now, it's $10,000 is not a small sum, but it's certainly not like $100,000 debt. Certainly, it's not like one of those college students who went to Yale and have $200,000 of debt for a law degree that they're never going to use. That's, well, man, what the fuck do those people do? I look at those stories in the newspaper and I have to pretend they don't exist because that person is fucked. But let's say you're not as fucked. Let's say you've got $10,000 of debt. That's a pretty serious issue, but not so serious. And
you just work out a regular payment schedule that is within your budget, and you control your spending and make sure that you have consistent employment so that you can make said payments. Like, yeah, you're going to be making those payments for a while, depending on your repayment rate. But that's it. Like, it's going to suck, and it's going to limit your financial spending opportunities. But I wouldn't necessarily say that is suffering. That's just a pain in the ass, an inconvenience. But I guess let's see what Sean has to say on this.
you say, well, I don't know if I can pay all this $10,000 off, but I can probably in the next 6 months, maybe I can pay off $2,000. You stick to your goal. You
Wait. How much did he say? Hold on. Let's back up 20 seconds here.
It's fucked. But let's say you're not as fucked. Let's say you've got $10,000 of debt. That's a pretty serious issue, but not so serious. And you say, well, I don't know if I can pay all this $10,000 off, but I can probably in the next 6 months, maybe I can pay off $2,000.
$2,000 in 6 months. Okay. I'm just going to say 5 months to make the math a little bit easier. That's $400 a month. If you can only pay off $400 a month, then you have some other outstanding debts that you need to deal with. Or you need to watch your spending habits or maybe make some lifestyle adjustments. Or you need to get, like, a better job. Like, 6 months for $2,000? I don't know. To me, that seems like you're kind of slacking on that. So, hey, again, although that being said, I do know some guys who would massively struggle with that, but they also have other outstanding debts to deal with. So, I don't know, I guess different circumstances lead to different kind of pressures, but if Sean, again, yoga instructor, but I'm guessing the yoga instructor doesn't pay that well. Either that or his cost of living at the time was just absolutely insane. I don't know. I don't know the details of his life, and well, I don't know the details of his life beyond what he exposes in these videos, which, in my personal opinion, he's definitely saying far more stuff that's detrimental to his image than is beneficial.
You stick to your goal. You get the $2,000 down, and now you're only $8,000 in debt. And well, $8,000 certainly is not as bad as $10,000. Maybe I can just do the same thing I'm doing already and pay out $2,000 more. And yeah, it's going to take a while. It's going to take you 6 months. I don't know. It's going to take you 3 years or whatever. Let's say that's correct.
$1,000 a month. $2,000. Oh! Okay, Sean. If you are paying off $2,000 in 6 months, it is going to take you 5 times 6 months, which is 2.5 years, to pay it off. 30 months, which is 2.5 years. Okay? Very, very easy math to do. Sorry, guys. Bit triggered by lazy math. Although, guys, I see in chat, you guys, meat prices. Well, you got to keep in mind that your body only absorbs so much protein every single day. So, when considering the price point of meat, I would not recommend a pure meat diet simply because there's going to be a certain amount of calories when you're not gaining any benefit beyond the calories for the meat. I need to double check exactly what it is, but you should substitute as much of your diet with meat as you reasonably can. And then, based on how many calories you need and your weight, either gain or loss goals, use the rest with carbs because they're going to be far more cost efficient. I don't recommend a pure carnivore diet just due to the price. If you can afford it, great. But if not, focus more on your calorie count and getting an appropriate amount of protein rather than trying to 100% substitute all calories with a protein source. My 2 cents, not a nutritional expert. Frost or Hermit or whatever he's going by now these days would know far more on the subject. But let's wrap this up. We're about 5 minutes out from the end of this. Holy bugger, this is taking a while.
But once that 3 years is over, if you've done well to not create more ridiculous problems or more problems that are in that direction, that are severe like that, you now have bettered yourself. You're now $10,000 out of debt. That's problem number one solved. Now instead of having 100 problems, you have 99 problems. And like I've said, success breeds success. If you succeed at this problem, or you succeeded in paying, it's probably going to be a little bit faster than this, but you succeeded in paying the $2,000 off, and you say, okay, well, I figured out the $2,000. I can just keep doing $2,000 increments on my $10,000 of debt. I can probably start working on another problem. This is that process of automation. Automation, what happens is you focus on, I don't think I actually explained this at the beginning of the episode, so sorry about that. But what happens is you focus on something so much that you don't have to think about it anymore. And so you've gotten so good at paying off a debt for $2,000 every 6 months that now it's not a good deal to do that. So now you can focus on problem number two. And problem number two is that you're 50 pounds overweight. And that's the next problem that you can solve that seems reasonable. And so what you do is you say, okay, let's do the same thing. In 6 months, I want to lose 10 pounds. That's pretty reasonable. You usually losing about a pound per week if you're doing weight loss properly. But sometimes you've got a bad week, you eat a shitload of junk food, you gain a pound back. So give yourself 6 months. That's twice the amount of time you need to lose that much weight. And if you succeed, well, you're 10 pounds lighter. By the way,
all right. So since chat's becoming a thing, So admittedly, I'm not too sure about nutrition stuff. Might be about of protein absorbed per meal versus per day. At the very least, yeah, eating a whole bunch of protein in one sitting is not going to be near as beneficial as spreading it out throughout the day. But either way, considering that the price of food nowadays is going up, I would not recommend your daily intake of protein go beyond 1 gram per pound. Like 1 gram of protein per pound of your current weight if you want to build muscle. Don't recommend going beyond that. and figure out what your daily caloric burn is and adjust the amount of other calories you absorb accordingly. I believe the app is MyFitnessPal. That can help you determine what your ideal caloric intake is per day. And then, yeah, that should help if you want to lose weight, gain weight, because admittedly, yeah, like if you're over 200 pounds, it really depends on your muscle to fat composition that determines whether or not that's healthy or unhealthy. If you're 240 pounds of mostly fat, yeah, that's a problem. If you're 240 pounds of mostly muscle, what the heck are you doing watching this? You should be go winning Mr. Olympia or something. But let's try to wrap this up. Even at freaking 1 times speed, this guy's got too much to tear apart. Oh wow, 6'4". Yeah, then 240 pounds is probably a lot healthier for you than a lot of people.
How much time people spend saying, I'm going to lose the weight, I'm going to lose the weight, and they do it. They do a diet, they lose 20 pounds in a week, and they quit the diet because it's too hard, and then they go back and get on the way back. Don't be that person. Do it slowly. Do it so that you can.
A diet is not something that you use as a temporary band-aid. If you are going to make a dietary change, you are making a lifestyle change. You are making a commitment to change stuff in your life to cut stuff out. Personally, I've cut out a lot of junk food and dessert, and like I just don't have that much of a sweet tooth anymore. Like if you said, "Hey, what would you rather have? A handful of candy bars or a box of pepperoni sticks?" I'll take the pepperoni sticks any day. I just genuinely find it much tastier. But it's just me. Wrap this up. Come on. We're almost done.
Can start adjusting to your new lifestyle, because this is not just a diet. This is a when you actually lose weight and when you get good at losing weight. Because I was terrible at losing weight when I was in high school, but after well, a little bit before after college, when I was 22 or so, I figured it out. And the way you figure it out is by changing your behaviors. Like one of the big rules I have to keep myself thin is if I'm going to buy junk food, which of course I buy junk food. Who does? I mean, very few people don't. Let's be honest here. Even people who eat super healthy, they cheat a little bit, they sin a little bit. But if I do buy junk food, I have the rule that if I buy whatever junk food I buy doesn't make it past today. So by the time, whenever I'm done eating, whenever I'm done going to sleep, everything I purchase today gets thrown in the trash. Because what will happen is that you'll buy junk food, you'll have some left over, and then you eat it the next day, and you have some left over the next day after that, and you'll eat it again, and eventually what your body will do is it'll start craving that junk food, it'll start craving the extra sugar. If you only do it for one day, and you have at least a couple of days off, or maybe preferably 6 days off, you're not going to put yourself in that cycle. You're going to have it for the.
John, post a full body picture of yourself. And then realize why you are not the person to take advice for about what is healthy eating. You took, apparently, you went to post-secondary education to study physiology. You are not the person who people look at and go, oh yeah, that's the body type I'd really like. Like a dude who's 300 pounds overweight can more realistically achieve a Mr. Olympia-esque form than you can. Keep in mind, your big thing was like, oh yeah, I eat junk food, but like, yeah, you also went vegan for a while and were basically starving yourself to death.
One day it's going to be done, and you're going to go back to your regular diet elsewhere. You have to make a change like that, otherwise you won't be able to maintain your weight loss. And so if you have 6 months to think about this, and you're slowly progressing your way down, you're losing half a pound a week in that case, roughly, you're going to have time to learn some of this stuff. And now, it was previously, it was difficult for you to solve one problem at the same time. Now you're solving two problems at the same time. If you do this for a bunch of years, so you do this for 5-10 years or so, you start out with 50 problems, you start out with 100 problems, now you have 50. You're suffering half as much now. Things are way better. You do it for another 5 years or so, maybe you have 25 problems. Like now, maybe you cut off 25, now you only have 25 left. I think that's the answer. I don't think that's what yoga was saying, but that's what could be taken.
Okay, I understand, yeah, minimize your problems. But that's not for the sake of just minimizing problems. Again, just personal example. My problem? I've got a crap ton of plastic aliens that need to be painted. I've got very high standards for how they need to be painted. And I also want to deal with, actually being able to play the freaking tabletop game. Is that a problem? Sure. Is it a problem that I necessarily want to eliminate? Well, not really, because if I wanted to just eliminate the problem, I'd just give up the hobby. It'd be super easy to eliminate the problem that way. So, no, like, you need problems, you need challenges, you need stuff to do. Like, a big thing that I've seen with men later in life is that when they stop having stuff to do, when they stop having problems, when they stop having to work, usually like right after they retire and they've run out of stuff to do after retirement, they age super fast and then they die. Problems, suffering keeps you alive. At the very least, as a man, it keeps you alive to have problems and to be solving said problems. The instant that you have solved the problems in your life, your body and mind will break down. I do not have scientific proof of this, only anecdotal. I'd ask you to look and see if you can observe this in your life. But I've seen it enough times in my life and heard it enough from old people that you need to have something to do, some problem to solve. Otherwise, you are going to hasten your own death. Let's wrap this up.
Again, from yoga, when yoga says life is suffering, when yoga says your life is miserable, things suck, you have all these problems, things are, everybody's evil, these things are all crazy. That's what they're saying. Despite that all this is the case, despite that, yes, life is suffering, despite that all that's there, you can make it less so. And the only way you are going to make it less so is if you identify, hey, life sucks, let's make it better. And the way you make it better is by doing so in easy steps that get progressively harder.
No, what you do is you look at all your problems and you go, you know what? Which of these problems do I want to have? Which can I not get? Avoid, and which can I dump? And you dump all unnecessary problems, which are usually problems imposed upon you by other people. Again, I'm going to pitch this book and hit me up on Discord if you want a copy. The Courage to be Disliked. All problems are interpersonal problems. That's one of the tenets of it. And is it absolute? Nah, you still need to, eat and take care of your bodily needs. But most of the problems that we think about in life are due to our relations with other people. Someone who doesn't have to interact with anyone else, they have very few to basically no problems. Someone who has a whole lot of social bonds and connections, yeah, they got a lot of problems. So, if you want to get rid of your problems, you got to figure out what problems are just, a part of life. Finding enough food to get through the next day, decent amount of sleep, looking after your health, etc. But there's probably a whole bunch of problems which aren't super necessary for you to have. It's just you're either comfortable having the problem or you don't want to deal with the consequences of getting rid of the problem. But trying to minimize problems in your life on principle just to generically minimize suffering without having problems that you actually want to have, i.e., the problems that come with things you enjoy or find fulfilling. No. Trying to just eliminate problems wholesale, that's a recipe for stagnation and death. And quite frankly, if you want that, I really don't think this channel is for you. There's probably someone else who can direct you down that pathway, but it's not going to be me. Let's wrap this up.
And you make them ridiculously easy when you start. And then as you succeed, as you get more competent, and you'll feel like, I can probably handle two of these things at the same time instead of one of these things. When you feel like that, that's when you start adding more. Now, if you decide to add more and you fail, of course, you've had all the success. You say, well, I succeeded over here, so this failure doesn't matter. What I need to do here is just lower it down. I'm just going to make it a little bit easier next time. And you readjust. Your goal might have been too unrealistic. You might not be capable of doing it, so let's make it so you are capable of doing it, so you succeed the next time. Failure can be a very, very productive experience if you fail so properly, if you think about it properly, and you use it as an opportunity to learn. It can be a very unproductive experience if you rage quit after failure. Anyway, this video has been quite a bit longer than I thought it would be, so I will leave it at that. Thanks for listening. If you made it all this way, that's pretty impressive. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. If you have anything to add, how about you throw that one in the
I'm pretty sure that this is one of the various videos that he's deleted. So it's probably not on his channel. So if you have anything to add to what he was saying, or anything to add to what I was saying, this is the only place you're going to be able to do that until my channel inevitably gets deleted once he figures this out and mass reports me to YouTube. Unless he doesn't care because I've only got 2K subs. But hey, I got more subs than it is the official year, so I'm feeling pretty good. Either way, closing off this segment. Oh my god, an hour and 21 minutes. This is stupid. Uh, I'm gonna. We'll be right back, guys. Jeez, thank you. Oh, seriously, 1 hour. That was 80 minutes. That video was 25 minutes, played at 1.5 times speed, and it still took me an hour and 21 minutes to get through it. Oh, I got 3 others queued up. This is going to be. Oh, I need more ice. I don't know if we'll get through all 4 videos in this one, but uh, I will be right back, guys. One minute. I'll hit the intermission. And we are back. And okay, the on point heavy, that gray ghost symbol looks like a Murphy. How does the little ghost icon look like a Murphy beard? There is no stripe. There is no stripe. It is not even remotely the correct color. It is a little purple ghost with a black toque. How the heck does that look like a Murphy beard? I am actually offended by that. Oh, sorry. I need to grab another bottle of mixer. 1 second. Yeah, I gotta be drinking mixed. If I try drinking pure freaking spice bold, I am not gonna be coherent within a couple hours, let alone through this kind of stuff. Jeez. Ay, ay, ay. Drink Everclear like every. You know what, Jazz? I keep meaning to pick it up every time I pass by the liquor store, but I'm usually not thinking about it. But just for you, I will look into getting some Everclear, and I will have my first shot of Everclear on stream with you. What will we be doing? I don't know. but I'll be sure to get some Everclear and set it aside for you. Oh, so yeah. It's 10:30. Chaz, like, I just want to redirect to your stream. Okay, you know what, guys? Chaz has his show starting right about now. We're not in the middle of a segment, so I'm going to call it early. We're going to head over to Chaz's stream. I'll continue there. And we will continue this particular Red Pill Cult meeting Monday. Tomorrow's probably no good. Sunday we have our usual streams. But Monday's a holiday for me. So yeah, we will continue this Monday evening. So until then, thank you very much. But stick around till the end of the segment. Or just head over to Chaz's stream right now. We will continue there. And I'll probably be hopping on and continue stuff. So again, thank you all very much for tuning in. And I'll be getting these video segments uploaded bit by bit as I dissect previous live streams and the segments that I've recorded. Thank you very much. Peace out, Warband.